They thought she was trash. They thought she was a gold digger from nowhere. In front of New York's elite, the powerful Sterling family didn't just divorce Martha. They destroyed her. They ripped the diamonds from her neck, the dress from her back, and threw her onto the cold pavement of Fifth Avenue while the paparazzi flashed their blinding lights. They wanted to strip her of her dignity, to leave her with absolutely nothing. But they made one fatal calculation. They didn't check who her father was. And when the richest man in Europe lands his helicopter on their front lawn to pick up his little girl, the Sterlings won't just lose their fortune, they're going to lose their freedom. This is the story of how a silent daughter-in-law became the judge, jury, and executioner. The chandeliers inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel didn't just sparkle, they judged. Or at least, that's how it felt to Martha Vance Sterling. At 24, Martha was beautiful in a quiet, understated way. Chestnut hair that refused to be tamed by hairspray, and eyes the color of sea glass that always seemed to be looking for an exit. Tonight was the Sterling Family Foundation's annual gala. In the high-stakes world of New York's old money, this wasn't a party, it was a performance review. And Martha was failing. She stood near a towering ice sculpture of a swan, clutching a glass of sparkling water she wasn't allowed to drink because her mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling, claimed carbonation made women look bloated and common. "Stand up straight, Martha. You look like a wilting cabbage." The voice sliced through the ambient jazz. Victoria Sterling, the matriarch of the Sterling shipping empire, approached. She was a woman made of steel wires and Botox, wearing a custom crimson Valentino gown that cost more than the house Martha grew up in. Beside her stood Preston, Martha's husband of 2 years. Preston was handsome in the way a mannequin is handsome, symmetrical, well-dressed, and completely hollow. "I'm sorry, Victoria," Martha murmured, straightening her spine. "The heels are a bit high. If you had the pedigree, you'd be born knowing how to walk in them," Victoria sneered, her voice low enough that the nearby senator couldn't hear, but loud enough to sting. She turned to her son. "Preston, fix her hair. She looks like she's been dragged through a hedge." Preston didn't look at his wife. He reached out and aggressively tucked a loose strand of hair behind Martha's ear, his touch cold. "Mother is right, Martha. Try to look like you belong here for once. The board is watching." Martha swallowed the lump in her throat. For 2 years she had endured this. The subtle digs, the isolation, the financial control. When she met Preston at a coffee shop in Boston, he had been charming, different. He claimed he wanted to escape his family's suffocating expectations. But as soon as the ring was on her finger, he folded back into the Sterling mold. They treated her like a stray dog they had regretfully adopted, a girl from a no-name family in rural Vermont with no connections, no money, and no defense. But tonight, the air felt different, heavier. Around 9:20 p.m., the music stopped. Victoria ascended the stage, taking the microphone. The room, filled with titans of industry, silenced instantly. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria began, her smile sharp enough to cut glass, "thank you for joining us to celebrate 50 years of Sterling excellence. We value truth, integrity, and purity above all else. Which is why it pains me to do this." Martha frowned. This wasn't in the program. Victoria's eyes locked onto Martha across the room. The spotlight followed, blinding her. "We welcomed Martha into our home," Victoria continued, her voice trembling with faked emotion. "We gave her a name, a life, and a future. And how did she repay us? By stealing from the very charity that feeds orphans." A gasp rippled through the crowd. Martha froze. "What?" she whispered. Security found the emerald necklace, the auction centerpiece, in her purse 10 minutes ago, Victoria announced, pointing a manicured finger at Martha. And we have uncovered bank transfers proving she has been siphoning funds to a secret account in the Caymans. No! Martha cried out, stepping forward, her hands shaking. That's a lie. Preston, tell them. You know I don't even have access to the accounts. She turned to her husband, desperate for a lifeline. Preston sipped his champagne, looking bored. Stop lying, Martha. It's embarrassing. I've already filed the papers. You're done. 2 burly security guards materialized beside her. This is a private event for honorable people, Victoria hissed into the mic. Strip her of everything sterling. She leaves with nothing, not even the clothes on her back, which my money paid for. The cruelty was so absurd, Martha thought it was a nightmare. You can't be serious, she stammered. The dress, Martha, Victoria commanded. It's a sterling asset. Take it off, or they will take it off for you. The room was deadly silent. Hundreds of phones were raised, recording. The shame burned hotter than fire. I have nothing underneath but slip shorts, Martha pleaded, tears spilling over. Please, Preston, take it off, Victoria screamed. One of the guards grabbed the shoulder of her silver silk gown. He yanked. The fabric tore with a sickening "Reap!" Martha screamed, clutching the tatters of the dress to her chest, trying to cover herself. The crowd murmured, some in shock, most in twisted amusement. The guard ripped the expensive diamond earrings from her lobes, leaving them stinging and red. He grabbed her clutch, her phone, her wallet, her keys, and tossed it to Preston. Get her out of here, Victoria spat. Rough hands shoved her toward the exit. Martha stumbled, half naked, holding the shredded remains of the dress against her body, barefoot because her heels had been kicked away. She was pushed through the revolving doors of the plaza and thrown onto the sidewalk of Central Park South. The humid New York air hit her skin. Passers-by stopped and stared. A paparazzi photographer, tipped off by Victoria, flashed his camera in her face. Click, click, click. Look this way, sweetie. How much did you steal? Martha curled into a ball on the cold concrete, sobbing uncontrollably. She was humiliated, broken. She had no money, no phone, no shoes, and the whole world was about to see her in her underwear, cast out like trash by the glorious Sterling family. Inside the ballroom, Victoria raised a toast. To trimming the fat. Preston clinked his glass against hers. But outside, in the shadow of the hotel, a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a Sterling car. It didn't belong to anyone inside that party. The rear window rolled down. A man with silver hair and eyes that looked like a stormy ocean stared at the shivering girl on the sidewalk. He picked up a satellite phone. Get the jet ready, the man said, his voice calm but terrifyingly deep, and called the legal team, all of them, even the ones in Zurich. He paused, watching Martha try to cover her face from the cameras. They just declared war on the wrong family. The paparazzi photographer, a sleazy man named Lenny, who made his living upskirting celebrities, moved in closer for a shot of Martha's tear-streaked face. Come on, honey, give us a smile. Tell us about the emeralds. Suddenly, the air shifted. A hand the size of a catcher's mitt clamped over Lenny's camera lens. That's enough, a voice grumbled. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Lenny looked up to see a mountain of a man in a bespoke black suit. He had a scar running through his eyebrow and an earpiece coiled behind his ear. This was Marcus, head of security for the Valenti family. Hey, freedom of press! Lenny shouted. Marcus didn't blink. He snatched the camera from Lenny's hands, popped the memory card out, crushed it between his thumb and forefinger, and dropped the ruined plastic into Lenny's shirt pocket. Then he tossed the camera into the street, where a passing taxi crushed it instantly. "Bill me," Marcus said flatly. He turned to Martha, who was shrinking away, trying to hide behind a concrete planter. He removed his suit jacket, pure cashmere, warm and heavy, and draped it over her shivering shoulders. "Miss Martha," Marcus said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Please come with us. You're safe now." I don't know you," Martha stammered, her teeth chattering violently. "I have no money. I can't pay you." "We don't want your money," Marcus said. He gestured to the open door of the Rolls-Royce Phantom. "He does." Martha looked into the dark interior of the car. The man with the silver hair was watching her. There was no lust in his eyes, no judgment, only a profound, aching sadness, and something else, recognition. She had nowhere else to go. If she stayed here, the police would come, or worse, the Sterlings would send someone to finish the job. She crawled into the car. The door shut, sealing out the noise of the city. The silence was instant and expensive. The man across from her poured a cup of hot tea from a thermos and handed it to her. His hands were manicured, wearing a signet ring with a crest she didn't recognize, a wolf holding a sword. "Drink," he said. "It's chamomile. It will help the shock." Martha gripped the cup, the warmth seeping into her frozen fingers. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Why are you helping me?" The man looked at her for a long time. He studied the shape of her nose, the curve of her jaw, the specific shade of sea glass green in her eyes. "My name is Alessandro Valenti," he said. The name meant nothing to Martha, but in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, it was a name that opened borders and closed governments. He was the majority shareholder of Valenti Heavy Industries, shipping, arms manufacturing, rare earth mining. He was worth more than the GDP of a small country. "I don't know that name," Martha said. "You wouldn't," Alessandro replied softly. "Your mother changed your name to Vance when she ran." Martha froze. "My mother died in a car accident when I was 3. I was raised by my aunt in Vermont." "Your aunt was your mother's former maid, and your mother didn't die in a car accident. She died of cancer 3 years ago, afraid to reach out to me because she thought I was the villain." Alessandro's jaw tightened. "She took you when you were an infant. We had disagreements. She wanted a simple life for you. I was embroiled in a corporate war that put us all in danger. She ran to protect you. I have spent 24 years turning over every stone on this planet looking for you." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a worn, crinkled photograph. He placed it on the leather seat between them. It was a Polaroid, a young, striking woman laughing, holding a baby with distinct sea glass eyes. The woman wore a necklace, a simple silver locket. Martha gasped. Her hand went to her neck, but the locket wasn't there. I have that locket. I did. Until tonight. Victoria Sterling. She took it." Alessandro's voice dropped an octave. The temperature in the car seemed to plunge. "She said it was cheap junk. She threw it in the trash bin in the kitchen before the party started." Alessandro pressed a button on the intercom. "Marcus, sir, we are making a detour. Go to the service entrance of the plaza. Retrieve my daughter's property." Daughter. The word hung in the air. Martha stared at him. "You think I'm your daughter?" "I don't think, Martha. I know. You have my mother's eyes and your own mother's chin, and tomorrow a DNA test will prove it to the world. But I don't need a test." He leaned forward, covering her trembling hand with his. "I am sorry I wasn't there to stop them tonight. I was landing when I saw the live feed of the gala. I was 5 minutes too late." Tears welled up in Martha's eyes again, but this time They weren't from shame. They were from relief. They took everything, she sobbed. My dignity. My reputation. They said I stole. They took nothing that matters, Alessandro said fiercely. And they gave you back to me. That is the biggest mistake they will ever make. The car came to a smooth halt. Marcus vanished into the service entrance of the hotel. 5 minutes later, he returned. He held a small, slightly dented silver locket. He handed it to Alessandro. Alessandro cleaned it with a silk handkerchief and handed it to Martha. Open it. Martha pried the locket open with a shaking fingernail. Inside was a tiny picture of Alessandro, 20 years younger, smiling. She looked up at him, the realization crashing over her. This wasn't a savior. This was her blood. "Papa," she whispered, the word feeling foreign on her tongue. Alessandro closed his eyes, a single tear escaping. "I'm here, Piccola, I'm here!" He tapped the glass partition. "Take us home, Marcus. The penthouse at 432 Park." As the car glided through the streets of Manhattan, Alessandro pulled out a sleek, black phone. He didn't dial a number. He pressed a speed dial labeled The Wolf Pack. "Wake up the legal team," Alessandro commanded, his voice shifting from fatherly warmth to ruthless tycoon. "I want the acquisition team in my office in 1 hour. Get me a list of every debt, every loan, and every supplier attached to the Sterling Corporation." He paused, listening to the person on the other end. "No," Alessandro said, a cruel smile touching his lips. "I don't want to sue them for defamation. That's for poor people. I want to buy their debt. I want to own the mortgage on their house. I want to own the network that broadcasts their little charity galas." He looked at Martha, who was wrapped in his coat, watching him with wide eyes. "They stripped my daughter in public," Alessandro said into the phone, his voice deadly calm. "So I am going to strip them of their future. By tomorrow morning, I want the name Sterling to be synonymous with bankruptcy." He hung up and looked at Martha. "Rest now, Martha. Tonight, you were the victim. Tomorrow, you are the heiress to the Valenti Empire. And the Sterlings? They are about to find out that they have been playing checkers while I have been playing chess for 40 years. The morning sun over Manhattan didn't hit Martha's face like a wake-up call. It felt like a spotlight she was finally ready to step into. She woke up in a bed that felt like a cloud, wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets with a thread count higher than her credit score. The room was vast, a glass box suspended in the sky at 432 Park Avenue, overlooking the entirety of Central Park. For a moment, she panicked. The muscle memory of fear kicked in. She expected Victoria screaming about the breakfast tea being too cold, or Preston complaining that she was breathing too loudly. Then, the door opened. It wasn't a maid. It was Alessandro. He was dressed in a navy suit that whispered power, holding a tablet. He sat on the edge of the bed, his expression softening as he looked at her. "The DNA results came in at 4 out a.m., he said quietly. He turned the tablet toward her. 99.9999% probability of paternity. Martha stared at the screen. The validation hit her chest like a physical blow. She wasn't trash. She wasn't nobody. She was a Valente. "I have lost 20 years with you, Martha," Alessandro said, his voice thick with emotion. "I will not lose another second. But before we can be a family, we have some housekeeping to do." He swiped on the tablet. A video played. It was the footage from last night outside the plaza. Victoria's screeching voice, the guard ripping her dress, Martha cowering on the pavement. It had 15 million views. "The world is laughing," Martha whispered, shame burning her cheeks again. "They're calling me the stripped gold digger." "No," Alessandro corrected her, his eyes hardening into flint. "The world is watching, And right now, they are watching a victim. By tonight, they will be watching a queen. He stood up and clapped his hands. The double doors swung open. A small army marched in. There were 3 women in severe black outfits, a man holding a garment bag that looked like it contained a body, and a woman with glasses who looked like she could dismantle a government with a single email. "This is your team," Alessandro introduced them. "Legal, public relations, and styling." Victoria Sterling destroyed the girl who walked into that party. "Good. That girl was weak. We are going to build the woman who destroys her." The next 6 hours were a blur of transformation. It wasn't just a makeover. It was a reconstruction. The stylist, a French woman named Claudette, who had dressed royalty, looked at Martha's hair. "Too soft," Claudette muttered. "We need edges. We need danger." They cut her hair into a sharp, asymmetrical bob that framed her jawline like a blade. They dyed the chestnut darker, almost black, making her sea glass eyes pop with startling intensity. Then came the wardrobe. No more flowery, submissive dresses that Victoria forced her to wear to look sweet. Claudette dressed her in a structured white power suit by Alexander McQueen, tailored to within a millimeter of her life, and 6-inch Louboutins with spikes on the heels. When Martha looked in the mirror, she gasped. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like the CEO of a company that just bought yours. "Now for the weapon," Alessandro said. He handed her a folder. Martha opened it. It was a financial dossier on the Sterling Family Foundation. "My team has been busy," Alessandro explained, pacing the room. "The Sterlings project wealth, but they are over-leveraged. They live on credit. They have a $400 million loan with the Zurich Sovereign Bank coming due next month. They were counting on the gala's donations and a merger with the crumbling Kensington Group to pay it off." "Victoria said the charity was doing record numbers," Martha said, reading the documents. "Victoria lies." Alessandro smiled, a predator showing his teeth. "I just got off the phone with the chairman of Zurich Sovereign. We go back a long way. I bought the debt, Martha, all of it. The mortgage on their Hamptons estate, the loan for their private jet, and the credit line for their company." Martha looked up, her heart pounding. "You own them." "Technically, we own them. I transferred the holding company into a trust in your name an hour ago." Alessandro leaned in close. "You are now their landlord, their banker, and their executioner." He checked his watch. "The Sterlings are having a victory lunch at Le Bernardin in 1 hour to celebrate getting rid of you. I think we should crash it." Martha's hands shook slightly. I can't face them yet. Not like this." Alessandro took her shoulders. "You entered that marriage as a mouse. You leave it as a lion. You are Martha Valenti. You have the blood of kings and killers in your veins. Do not look down. Do not apologize. You walk in there, and you take what is yours." Martha looked at her reflection one last time. The scared girl from Vermont was gone. In her place was a woman holding a hand grenade with the pin already pulled. "Let's go, Papa," she said. Le Bernardin was the kind of restaurant where the waiters whispered and the water cost more than a minimum wage paycheck. At the center table, the Sterling clan was holding court. Victoria Sterling was radiant, laughing loudly at a joke made by a senator she was trying to bribe. Preston sat beside her, looking relieved. "I'm telling you, it's a clean break," Victoria said, swirling her Pinot Grigio. "The lawyers said since we annulled the marriage based on fraud, thanks to those planted emeralds, she gets nothing. Not a dime of alimony." "I almost feel bad for her," Preston mumbled, buttering a roll. She looked pretty pathetic on the sidewalk. "Pathetic is a choice, darling," Victoria snapped. "We trimmed the dead weight. Now focus. The Kensington merger happens on Friday. Once that cash hits, we pay off the Swiss loan, and the sterling name is bulletproof for another century." "Excuse me, Mrs. Sterling?" The maitre d' approached the table. He looked pale. Sweat was beading on his forehead. "What is it, Charles?" "We ordered the tasting menu 20 minutes ago." Victoria huffed. "It's not the food, madam. Your credit card was declined." The table went silent. The senator cleared his throat awkwardly. "Don't be ridiculous," Victoria scoffed. "It's a black Amex. It doesn't have a limit." "Run it again." "We did, madam. 3 times. The bank says the account has been frozen due to a change in ownership of the underlying assets." Victoria stood up, her face turning crimson. "This is incompetence. I will have your job. Preston, give him your card." Preston pulled out his card. The maitre d' shook his head before he even took it. "We tried Mr. Sterling's card on file as a backup. It is also frozen." "Who is doing this?" Victoria shrieked, causing the entire restaurant to turn. "Call the bank. Get me the chairman." "Perhaps I can explain." The voice cut through the room like a cello bow. It was deep, accented, and commanded absolute silence. Everyone turned toward the entrance. Walking through the dining room was Alessandro Valenti. He moved with the casual arrogance of a man who owned the building. But no one was looking at him. They were looking at the woman on his arm. Martha. But it wasn't the Martha they knew. This wasn't the girl in the floral prints who stuttered when she ordered wine. This was a vision in white architectural couture, her dark hair sharp, her makeup flawless, her posture regal. She didn't walk. She glided. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. Preston's fork clattered onto his plate. "Martha?" he choked out. She didn't even look at him. She stopped at the edge of their table, looking down at Victoria as if she were a stain on the carpet. "You," Victoria stammered, her eyes darting between Martha and the terrifying man beside her. "What are you doing here? You aren't welcome. Security." "Sit down, Victoria," Alessandro said. He didn't raise his voice, but the command was so forceful that Victoria actually sat. "Who are you?" she hissed. "I am Alessandro Valenti," he said. The senator at the table choked on his water. He knew that name. Everyone with real power knew that name. "And this," Alessandro gestured to Martha, "is my daughter, Martha Valenti." Victoria's face went white. "Daughter? That's impossible. She's a nobody, an orphan." "She was lost," Alessandro corrected, "and now she is found, and she is very, very upset with how you treated her." Martha stepped forward. She placed a single thin folder on the table, right on top of Victoria's butter plate. "What is this?" Preston asked, his voice trembling. "Notice of default," Martha spoke. Her voice was steady, cool, and unrecognizable to them. "You missed a covenant requirement on your loan with Zurich Sovereign, specifically the reputational damage clause." "We haven't damaged our reputation," Victoria argued shrilly. "You stripped a woman naked and threw her onto Fifth Avenue," Martha said, a small, cold smile playing on her lips. "The internet disagrees with your assessment of your reputation. The bank decided you are a high-risk liability." "So?" Victoria spat. "We'll refinance. We have friends." "You have no friends," Alessandro interjected, "because I bought your debt this morning, all 400 million of it. And as the new note holder, I am exercising my right to call the loan immediately." "You can't do that," Preston said, standing up. "We have 30 days. "Read page 4, Martha said, locking eyes with her ex-husband. "In the event of criminal activity, say, filing a false police report about a stolen necklace, the debt becomes payable instantly." She leaned in, her scent of expensive jasmine and vengeance filling Preston's nose. You have 24 hours to pay us $400 million, Preston. If you don't, we initiate foreclosure proceedings on the Sterling Tower, the Hamptons estate, and, oh yes, the clothes on your back." Victoria looked like she was having a stroke. You ungrateful little witch. We took you in. You took in a punching bag," Martha said. "You didn't realize it was a bomb." Martha turned to the maître d'. "Charles, put their lunch on my tab. It's the last decent meal they're going to have for a while." She turned on her heel, the red soles of her shoes flashing like warning lights. Alessandro offered her his arm. "Wait!" Preston shouted, running after them as they reached the door. He grabbed Martha's arm. "Martha, baby, wait. We can talk about this. I didn't know. If I knew you were a Valente. Please, I love you." Martha stopped. She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his desperate, sweating face. "Marcus," she said softly. The mountain of a bodyguard stepped out of the shadows. He didn't hit Preston. He simply stepped into his space with such menace that Preston released her arm and stumbled back, tripping over a chair. Martha looked down at him, her eyes devoid of any emotion. "I tried to be a good wife, Preston. I loved you when I had nothing. Now that I have everything, I don't need you at all." She walked out into the sunlight, leaving the Sterlings in the ruins of their lunch, while the senator quietly got up and left through the back exit, already texting his team to distance himself from the Sterling family. The war had begun, and the first shot was a headshot. The Sterling Corporation headquarters was a monolith of glass and steel in Lower Manhattan, a physical testament to a century of dominance. But inside the boardroom on the 50th floor, the atmosphere was more akin to a sinking life raft. It was 24 hours after the disastrous lunch at Le Bernardin. Victoria Sterling paced the length of the mahogany table, her phone glued to her ear. She looked haggard. The makeup artists hadn't been able to hide the dark circles under her eyes. "What do you mean, dropped?" she shrieked into the receiver. "We have had a sponsorship deal with Cartier for 10 years. The morals clause? That girl was a thief. Hello? Hello?" She threw the phone onto the table. It slid across the polished surface and stopped near Preston, who was sitting with his head in his hands. "That was Cartier," Victoria spat. "Gone. Van Cleef is gone. The Met Gala just rescinded our invitation. We are radioactive." "It's the video," Preston moaned, looking at his laptop. "It has 40 million views now. Someone remixed it with a sad violin track. Justice for Martha is trending worldwide. People are cancelling their shipping contracts with us. The stock is down 18% since the market opened." "Stop whining," Victoria commanded. "It doesn't matter. None of it matters as long as the Kensington merger goes through at 2 p.m. Once we sign that deal, we get an injection of 600 million. We pay off Valenti, we weather the storm, and in 6 months, the internet will have moved on to some other tragedy." The double doors opened. Their legal team entered, looking grim. Following them were the representatives from the Kensington Group. Victoria composed herself instantly. She smoothed her skirt and forced a smile that looked more like a rictus of pain. "Gentlemen, welcome. I apologize for the chaotic atmosphere. Just a minor PR hiccup." The lead negotiator for Kensington, a man named Mr. Thorne, didn't sit down. He remained standing, clutching his briefcase. "Mrs. Sterling," Thorne said coolly, "we are not here to sign the merger." Victoria's blood ran cold. "Excuse me? We have a letter of intent. If you back out now, the penalty fees—" "There will be no penalty fees," Thorne interrupted. "Because the entity known as the Kensington Group no longer exists as an independent body." "What are you talking about?" Preston asked, standing up. "As of 9 a.m. this morning, a hostile takeover was completed via a shell corporation, Thorne explained, pulling a document from his case. The majority shares were purchased at a 40% premium. We have a new owner, and the new owner has instructed us to terminate all negotiations with Sterling Corp immediately. Victoria grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Who? Who has that kind of liquidity to buy Kensington overnight? The conference room screen flickered to life. The face that appeared was high definition and larger than life. Alessandro Valenti sat in his office, steepling his fingers. Behind him, standing by the window looking out at the skyline, was Martha. "Hello, Victoria," Alessandro's voice boomed through the surround sound speakers. "You?" Victoria whispered, horror dawning on her. "I told you," Alessandro said pleasantly. "I play chess. You were banking on Kensington to save you, so I bought the bank. I bought the lifeboat before you could get on it." Martha turned from the window. She walked toward the camera. She wore a simple black turtleneck and the expression of a judge delivering a death sentence. "There is no money coming, Victoria," Martha said. "The deadline for the loan repayment is in..." She checked her watch. 12 minutes. "You can't do this!" Preston shouted at the screen. "You're destroying a 100-year legacy. This is my birthright." "You forfeited your birthright when you watched your mother strip your wife naked and did nothing," Martha replied, her voice devoid of pity. "We have assets," Victoria screamed. "We will sell the fleet. We will sell the Hamptons estate." "Too late," Alessandro interjected. "The default notice was filed yesterday. The assets are frozen. You cannot sell a teaspoon without my permission, and I don't give it." Alessandro leaned forward, his eyes piercing through the screen. "Marcus is in the lobby of your building right now with the U.S. Marshals. You are being evicted from the premises. Sterling Corp is now under the conservatorship of Valente Heavy Industries." "Evicted?" Victoria gasped. "This is my building." "Not anymore," Martha said. "Pack your things, Victoria. But remember, only personal items. If you take so much as a stapler that belongs to the company, I'll have you arrested for theft. I hear you hate thieves." The screen went black. Victoria collapsed into a chair. A moment later, the heavy thud of boots echoed in the hallway. The doors burst open. Marcus stood there, flanked by federal agents. "Time to go," Marcus rumbled, cracking a smile. "And leave the company phones. They aren't yours anymore." If the eviction from the office was humiliating, what happened 3 days later was a dismantling of the soul. The Sterlings had retreated to the only place they had left, a small rented townhouse on the Upper East Side, paid for by a distant cousin who took pity on them. Their accounts were frozen. Their credit cards were useless. The paparazzi were camped outside 24/7, shouting questions every time Preston tried to leave to buy coffee. But Martha wasn't done. "The financial ruin is punishment for their greed," Martha had told Alessandro the night before. "But it's not punishment for the crime." Alessandro had smiled, handing her a red file folder. "Then let us address the crime." On Tuesday morning, the Sterlings were arguing in their cramped living room. "You need to call him, Preston," Victoria was shrieking. She looked disheveled, her roots showing grey for the first time in decades. "Beg her. Tell her you were brainwashed. Get her to drop the foreclosure on the Hamptons house so we can at least sell the art." "She won't talk to me, Mother," Preston yelled back, throwing a cushion. "She blocked my number. She blocked my email. She hates us." "She is a weak girl from Vermont. She can be manipulated," Victoria insisted. "We just need to..." Boom! 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 The front door shook on its hinges. "Police! Open up!" Preston froze. Victoria's eyes went wide. They must be here for protection," Victoria reasoned, her voice trembling. "Because of the paparazzi." Preston opened the door. 10 NYPD officers streamed into the hallway, led by a Detective Miller, a woman with a sharp face and no patience for socialites. Victoria Sterling. Preston Sterling? Yes, Victoria said, stepping forward, trying to summon her old, imperious tone. Finally. Officer, get these photographers away from my... Victoria Sterling, you are under arrest, Detective Miller announced, pulling out a pair of steel handcuffs. What? Victoria laughed, nervously. Don't be absurd. For what? Grand larceny, insurance fraud, embezzlement of charitable funds, and filing a false police report, Miller listed off, spinning Victoria around and clamping the cuffs onto her wrists. Ouch! You're hurting me! This is a mistake! Victoria screamed. I am a Sterling. And I'm the Tooth Fairy, Miller deadpanned. Preston Sterling, turn around. You are under arrest for conspiracy and accessory to fraud. Me? Preston squeaked as an officer slammed him against the wall. I didn't do anything. It was her. It was all her. You signed the police report claiming your wife stole the necklace, Miller said, and you signed the tax returns for the orphans fund that was actually paying for your mistress's apartments. No, Preston sobbed as the cuffs clicked. They were hauled out of the townhouse. The moment the door opened, the wall of flashbulbs went off. The paparazzi went wild. Victoria, did you frame her? Preston, how does it feel to be the broke one? But amidst the chaos, a black Rolls-Royce was parked across the street. The rear window was down. As the police dragged a struggling, screaming Victoria toward the squad car, she looked up and saw it. Martha was sitting in the car. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. She was simply watching. She wore the emerald necklace. The very one Victoria had claimed was stolen. It gleamed in the sunlight, a green eye of judgment. Victoria stopped struggling. She stared at the necklace. The detective shoved her forward. Move it! She has it! Victoria screamed, frothing at the mouth, trying to lunge toward the car. She has the necklace. Look, arrest her. Detective Miller rolled her eyes. Yeah, we know she has it. Her father bought it back from the auction house yesterday. Legally. Unlike you, who hid it in the pantry to file a $2 million insurance claim. Victoria's knees gave out. The reality crashed down on her. The security cameras in the ballroom kitchen. They had found the footage of her, planting the necklace in Martha's purse, and then hiding the real one. Alessandro's team had found everything. She wasn't just broke. She was going to prison. The officers shoved Victoria into the back of the cruiser. She looked like a trapped animal, pressing her face against the glass. Across the street, Martha watched the police car pull away, sirens wailing. Alessandro reached over and squeezed her hand. It is done. Martha touched the cool emeralds at her throat. Not quite, she said softly. They took my reputation. I want to tell the world exactly who they are. The interview is set for tonight, Alessandro confirmed. Prime time, with Oprah. Martha nodded. She hit the button to roll up the window. Let's go get ready, Papa. The Rolls-Royce pulled away, leaving the chaos behind, gliding smoothly toward a future that belonged entirely to Martha Valenti. The green room at the Global Broadcasting Studios in Hudson Yards was quiet, insulated from the chaos outside. Martha stood before a floor-to-length mirror, smoothing the fabric of her dress. It was a deep, iridescent emerald green, a deliberate, unmissable reference to the necklace that had started the war. The fabric was heavy silk, structured and armor-like, designed by Claudette to make her look less like a celebrity and more like a head of state. Alessandro sat on a leather sofa nearby, watching her. He held a bottle of water, the cap already unscrewed. You don't have to do this, he said, his voice low. We have the company. We have the assets. The Sterlings are in a holding cell awaiting sentencing. You have won, Martha. You don't need to explain yourself to the world. Martha turned to him. Her bobbed hair was sharp, her makeup flawless, but her eyes held a flicker of the old Martha, the one who used to apologize for taking up space. "I do, Papa," she said. "If I disappear now, I'm just the rich girl who got lucky. I'm just a scandal. I need to be the narrative. They spent 2 years telling the world I was a gold digger. Tonight, I write the last chapter." A production assistant knocked on the door. "5 minutes, Miss Valenti. The world is waiting." The set was designed for intimacy, but the energy was electric. This was the most anticipated interview of the decade. Across from Martha sat Eleanor Vance, no relation, the sharpest, most respected journalist in primetime television. When the cameras rolled, the applause was deafening. It wasn't polite clapping. It was a roar. It took a full minute for Eleanor to quiet the audience. "Martha," Eleanor began, leaning forward, "3 weeks ago, you were photographed on 5th Avenue in a state of absolute humiliation. Today, you sit here as the chairwoman of the Valenti Sterling Group. The internet calls it the revenge of the century. But looking at you now, you don't look angry." Martha adjusted the microphone on her lapel. "Anger is a fire, Eleanor. It burns hot, but it burns out. If I had stayed angry, I would have burned down with them. I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice. There is a difference." "Let's talk about that night," Eleanor pressed. "Victoria Sterling claimed you stole the centerpiece auction necklace. We now know, thanks to security footage your father's team recovered, that she planted it. Why? Why go to such lengths to destroy the woman married to her son?" Martha looked into the camera. She imagined Victoria watching this from a small TV in the common room of the detention center. "Because I was inconvenient," Martha said clearly. "I was a nobody from Vermont. I didn't bring a merger or a dowry. To people like Victoria and Preston, human beings are assets. If an asset doesn't perform, you liquidate it. They tried to liquidate me." "And Preston?" Eleanor asked. "Your husband, the man who vowed to protect you." Martha's expression cooled. "Preston loved the idea of defying his mother by marrying me, but he loved his mother's money more. When he had to choose between my dignity and his inheritance, he didn't hesitate. He held my purse while she ripped my dress." A gasp rippled through the studio audience. "We have something to show you," Eleanor said. "Preston Sterling's legal team sent over a statement this morning. Would you like to hear it?" Martha nodded. "Go ahead." Eleanor read from a card. "I was under extreme duress and financial coercion from my mother. I never wanted to hurt Martha. I was a victim of Victoria's manipulation just as much as she was. I still love my wife and pray for a reconciliation." Martha let out a short, dry laugh. It was a sound devoid of humor. "He prays for a reconciliation," Martha repeated. "He doesn't pray for forgiveness. He prays for access to the bank accounts he lost." She looked directly at the lens. "Preston, if you are watching, you aren't a victim. You are a coward, and cowards don't get a second chance." The audience erupted in cheers. "So what happens now?" Eleanor asked as the noise died down. "You own the Sterling Corporation. You own their homes. You own the legacy. Do you keep the name?" "No," Martha announced. "Effective tomorrow morning, the Sterling Corporation is dissolved. The shipping assets will be absorbed into Valenti Heavy Industries. But the Sterling Family Foundation, that is different. What will you do with it?" "I am rebranding it," Martha said, her voice rising with passion. "It is now the Phoenix Initiative. We are liquidating the Hamptons estate, the private jets, and the art collection. That capital, roughly $600 million, is going into a trust." "A trust for what?" "For legal defense," Martha smiled. For every woman who has been silenced by a powerful family, for every wife whose husband controls her finances, for every girl who was told she was trash because she didn't come from money, the Phoenix Initiative will provide the best lawyers in the world to women who can't afford them. We are going to use the sterling fortune to destroy the very kind of bullying the sterlings represented. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the audience rose to their feet. It was a standing ovation that lasted until the commercial break. 2 days later, the real closure began. Martha walked into the lobby of the Sterling Tower. The large silver letters spelling Sterling behind the reception desk were already gone, leaving only ghostly outlines on the marble wall. The staff, those who hadn't been fired for complicity, looked at her with a mixture of awe and terror. She walked past them to the private elevator that led to the 50th floor. Victoria's office. The room was exactly as Victoria had left it the day the marshals dragged her out. A half-drunk cup of coffee sat on the desk, now growing mold. A silk scarf was draped over the chair. Martha walked around the massive oak desk. She sat in Victoria's chair. It was uncomfortable, stiff, rigid, designed to force you to sit upright. "Marcus," she said. The head of security stepped in. "Ma'am?" "This furniture," Martha said, running a hand over the cold wood. "Burn it." "Burn it, Ma'am? It's an antique 18th century French desk worth about 50,000. "I don't care," Martha interrupted softly. "It smells like her perfume. I don't want it sold. I don't want it donated. I want it turned to ash. Clear the room. Strip it to the studs. We're making this a daycare center for the employees' children." Marcus grinned, a rare expression for the stoic giant. "With pleasure, Ms. Valenti." As Marcus began coordinating the movers, Martha noticed a small, locked drawer in the credenza behind the desk. She looked around for a key, then realized she didn't need one. She picked up a heavy crystal paperweight and smashed the lock. Inside wasn't money or jewelry. It was a stack of files. She pulled the top one. It was labeled Project Martha. Her hands shook as she opened it. It was dated 2 weeks before she had even met Preston. It contained background checks on her, photos of her working at the coffee shop in Boston, and a psychological profile commissioned by Victoria. A note in Victoria's jagged handwriting was clipped to the front. Subject is docile, financially desperate, and has no family connections. Perfect candidate for Preston. Will not fight back when discarded. Martha stared at the paper. The marriage hadn't been a mistake. It hadn't been a romance that soured. It had been a setup from the very first latte Preston ordered. They had hunted her because they thought she was weak. They needed a wife for Preston to look respectable for the board, but someone disposable enough to toss aside when the Kensington merger required a fresher face. She wasn't a failure. She was a target. Martha took the file. She walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the city that had once chewed her up. She pulled a lighter from her pocket, one she had found in the desk. She lit the corner of the file. She watched the flames lick up the side of the paper, consuming the words docile and desperate. She dropped the burning file into the metal trash can and watched it turn to black dust. "I hope you're watching, Victoria," she whispered to the smoke, "because I'm definitely fighting back." The sentencing. The courtroom was packed. The sketch artists were working furiously. Victoria Sterling stood before the judge. The jumpsuit hung off her gaunt frame. The Botox had worn off, leaving her face sagging and defeated. Preston stood beside her, shaking like a leaf. The judge, the Honourable Justice Holloway, adjusted his glasses. He looked down at the defendants with undisguised disgust. "The greed displayed in this case is staggering. Justice Halloway intoned. "But the cruelty is what defines it. You didn't just steal money. You attempted to destroy a human life for sport." "It was a misunderstanding," Victoria cried out, her voice cracking. "I am a philanthropist. I have given millions to this city." "You stole millions from this city," the judge corrected. "Victoria Sterling, for the counts of grand larceny, fraud, and embezzlement, I sentence you to 15 years in a federal correctional institution with no possibility of parole for at least 12. Victoria screamed. It was a primal, ugly sound. Her knees gave out, and her attorney had to catch her. "Preston Sterling," the judge continued, "for your role as an accessory and for perjury, I sentence you to 8 years. 8 years, Preston wailed. "I can't do 8 years. Look at me. I have asthma." "Take them away," the judge ordered. As the bailiffs grabbed them, Victoria's eyes scanned the courtroom. She saw Martha sitting in the back row, next to Alessandro. Martha wasn't smiling. She wasn't cheering. She was simply witnessing. "Martha!" Victoria shrieked as she was dragged toward the side door. "Martha, help me. I'm your mother. In the eyes of God, I'm your mother." Martha didn't flinch. She watched the heavy oak door slam shut, silencing the screams. Outside the courthouse, the press was a frenzy. "Martha, how do you feel? Is justice served?" Martha stopped at the microphones. She put on her sunglasses. "The Sterlings are the past," she said simply. "I'm only interested in the future." Epilogue. The City of Lights, 6 months later. The air in Paris was crisp, smelling of roasted chestnuts and rain. Martha sat at a small iron table outside a café in Le Marais, a hot chocolate in front of her. She looked different. Her hair was softer now, growing out of the sharp bob into a wavy style that caught the wind. She wore a simple cashmere sweater and jeans. No armor. She didn't need armor anymore. Alessandro sat across from her, reading a newspaper. "The stock price is up again," he commented without looking up. "The Phoenix Initiative just announced a partnership with the United Nations." "That's good." Martha smiled, tearing a piece of croissant. "But stop working, Papa. We're on vacation." "I'm not working," Alessandro protested, folding the paper. "I am simply keeping score." He looked at his daughter. The sadness that had haunted his eyes for 20 years, the grief of losing her mother, the guilt of missing her childhood, was finally beginning to fade. "You know," Alessandro said softly, "your mother used to sit at this exact cafe. She loved the chocolate here." Martha touched the locket around her neck. It contained 2 photos now, her father on one side and a restored picture of her mother on the other. "Do you think she'd be proud?" Martha asked. "Of what I did? Or would she think I was too cruel?" Alessandro reached across the table and took her hand. "She ran away to protect you from the cruelty of my world. But you didn't run. You faced the cruelty, and you turned it into a shield for others. She wouldn't just be proud, Martha. She would be in awe." Martha looked out at the Seine River, flowing steadily toward the ocean. The nightmare of the gala, the cold pavement, the flashbulbs, it all felt like a movie she had watched a long time ago. She was no longer Mrs. Sterling. She was no longer the victim. She was Martha Valenti. And for the first time in her life, the story wasn't happening to her. She was writing it. She picked up her cup in a toast. "To the future," she said. Alessandro clinked his cup against hers. "To the Queen." And that is the story of Martha Valenti. It's a reminder that sometimes rock bottom is just the solid foundation you need to build an empire. The Sterlings thought that dignity was something you could buy with money or strip away with force. They learned the hard way that true class isn't about what you wear. It's about how you treat people. They tried to bury Martha, but they forgot one crucial detail. She was a seed, and with the help of a father who never stopped looking for her, she bloomed into a force of nature that brought their house of cards crashing down. Wow, what a journey, from the cold pavement of Fifth Avenue to the cover of Time magazine. If Martha's story gave you chills, or if you just loved seeing the Sterlings get exactly what they deserved, hit that like button right now. It helps the channel so much. And tell me in the comments, do you think Victoria and Preston deserved 20 years, or was losing their fortune punishment enough? I read every single comment. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss another story of justice, karma, and incredible twists. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.